This episode's never going to see the light of day.
I am.
Do you understand how
pretty drunk on Fireball?
Hello, everybody. I'm Will.
And I'm Kristin.
And this is So I'm Watching This Show. On today's episode, we are going to have a conversation about the third Harry Potter movie, Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
What?
Yeah, hold on. I don't have any water.
Like a sip of my Fireball?
No, I would not. Yeah, there's a handful of things that we're attempting to cover with this, and we'll see how it goes. Primarily, this is a little bit of an advertisement for our Patreon, because if you would like to watch along with us, we watched the entire movie over on our Patreon. It should be there now, and we have a lot of the conversations there.
Yeah.
And that was a little bit strategic on my part. Basically, I wanted to do this. We talked about it. We like the Harry Potter movies. We like the Harry Potter books. And I just sort of was at a place where I'm like, what are we doing culturally with this? Are we doing this? Are we not? People have opinions, yada, yada. So we're continuing with it.
Yeah.
I think the issue that I have is that I feel like there's an elephant in the room with Harry Potter, and I am unsure as to how to go about it. I'm unsure as to whether the best way is to tackle it head on, like first thing, get it out of the way and then proceed to talk about it, or to just not even bother giving oxygen to that.
I mean, I think
to that conversation.
I think you have to give it a little bit of oxygen. And I think part of the issue is that this, I mean, it's obviously happened before, and it happens still, and it happens consistently, but like, this is on such this broad of a scale. I think this is the first time that a creator of this caliber has just so completely nuked their own legacy in real time. So like, we're watching it happen, and
unnecessarily,
and totally unnecessarily. And so this is like a really weird like space for our generation to be in, because this is something that we legitimately grew up with. The first movie came out when we were in high school. So it's like, it's a
and the books came out when we were in elementary and middle school.
Yeah, came out much earlier than that. And so it's like, this is definitely like a touchstone for the millennial generation in a way that, you know, I mean, honestly, it's kind of par for the course for the millennial generation, where it's like, sure, this is ruined too. Congratulations. Like, so,
you got what you wanted.
You got it. It's ruined.
We have nothing.
But I think, to your point, because you've made this point before, Harry Potter...
there's so much value in it. And I think that value far outlives the current...
It's such a cultural touchstone that, in my opinion, it is larger than the, frankly, terrible social and political views of its creator, that I don't think it is likely or possible or necessary to pretend that these books and movies don't exist.
Because there's factions of people. There's some people who are totally pro. There's some people who are totally con.
Yeah.
And then there's, you know, in between. And we try to do these things pragmatically, but ethically. And so I think that where we're at currently is sort of like acknowledging the places, acknowledging the flaws, but also not allowing that to dictate the entire...
Yeah, it's very, I can't change my whole life energy. Like, I can't... I shop at Amazon. Jeff Bezos is a bad guy. It's too convenient and it's too cheap. There is no ethical consumption under capitalism. I can't change my whole life.
There's an episode of Futurama that's about Amazon for the new run of Futurama, and it's kind of funny because basically Amazon grows exponentially and it gets too big for even Amazon to contain. And so it ends up with all of us, like the entire universe is living inside of Amazon.
It's my universe now. You just shop in it.
I mean, it is convenient, though.
And so it gets so big that
there's nothing else.
You can't see the forest for the trees, so what's the point?
Yeah.
And not for nothing, I mean, that's sort of, you know, where we get to. And we get into it a little bit more in the watch along. So if you want to watch that, you can head on over to the Patreon. it's backloaded. But we do talk a lot about the movie and the specifics and stuff, because if we're actually talking about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban, both of us have a lot of things to say.
Yeah.
I love this movie. Apparently, a lot. That was
More
I remember
than he was anticipating.
I remember liking it because I don't like children. Like, I don't like kids. I'm not clamoring for young kids in my media. That's just not my thing. But I was very intrigued by this world and the reality and the storytelling. And so I remember this movie being the first time where I was like, oh, okay, I can get on board with this, because they're proper teenagers at this point, the actors certainly. And it was the first time, because I mentioned we were like 18, 19, whatever, watching this. And I was like, oh, they're getting cute. And we put Emma Watson in her little pink hoodie, and their like haircuts are nice. And the stakes are upped. They're dealing more in, I mean, we don't, romance plays a part in a franchise like this, but it never turns into a grand sweeping romantic epic.
Sure.
However, what is there, this is when we start getting...
This is when I started getting a crush on Draco, for sure. For sure.
So I have a lot of specific reasons, some of which we'll highlight in a minute, but I did want to give you a chance to explain your relationship to it, because it is not your favorite.
No.
Though you do like a lot of parts of it.
I do like a lot of parts of it. My biggest complaint about this movie specifically is that the timeline is wrong. It's just, I understand
from the book
the timeline is incorrect. I understand Alfonso Cuarón, it did an amazing job. This movie is breathtaking to look at. It's really cool. It's really pretty. I like all of that. But there is something to be said for changing the timeline in such a way that essentially removes all of Hermione's dramatic narrative in this.
Inertia.
Yeah. So it's like Hermione is like just there, and like she punches Draco, and that's great.
Because I remember that being one of the kind of takeaways when it happened.
Yeah.
Was that because that scene gave the franchise a bit of a jolt.
Yeah.
I mean, to have one of our characters hit another one, let alone to have it be...
Fantastic.
Well, to have it be her and
so
to have it be
also,
him, it's sort of like, oh, now we're cooking with gas.
Because there's so many, especially when you think about it, and I mentioned in the watch along that I have read a great deal of Harry Potter fan fiction, largely in the Draco and Hermione pairing. And so what I do, so I have like a lot more like fan canon, like depth going on in my brain when I watch the scenes they have together.
Well, you brought up some stuff that the movies don't even touch on about, for instance, Hermione's position in this friend group.
Yeah.
About how not only is she just like timeline wise older than them, but there's a case to be made that she's even a year older than that once you factor in all of the life experience the
time travel
she's getting from time traveling for an entire year of school.
But what I like the best about the moment, and because it does create a jolt regardless, but I think it does ping something in people's brains that they can't fully vocalize, especially when we were, like you said, 18, 19 when this came out, where it's like, what's especially interesting and kind of exciting about when she punches Draco in the face is that he is a pureblood wizard and she is Muggle-born, so she has no magic in her family at all. And she physically hits him.
They have a human interaction, not a magic.
Best him in a magical duel, which she also would do. Because
well, she starts
better
to
than him.
But that's the point.
He's scared enough of that because he knows she's better than him at magic. But then she hauls off and like physically hits him, and it's even more like.
It's actually, I feel so powerful right now because no, it's like because she contemplates it and she was like, I can best you right now on an even playing field.
100%.
But also even just on a human playing field.
Yeah.
Like, it's like...
That's why I find them to be such a compelling pairing when I'm reading fan fiction, because he has to do all of this work to, like, be worthy of her, but also she has to do a lot of work because no matter how much she reads, she is ignorant of parts of wizarding culture because she didn't grow up in it. So it's
and she does have a chip on her shoulder.
And she does have a chip on her shoulder, and she also just, like, doesn't understand. So it's like there are things that not growing up in the wizarding world she'll never fully understand. And so it's very whenever they get together, it's like a marrying of two like opposite people who have to meet in the middle in order to be successful.
Is there more of it in the books than we get in the movies?
No, they don't interact in that way.
Okay.
Was I not done? Did you want me to talk more about my issues? It is mostly the timeline.
Was I not done?
Yeah.
I was gonna say I wanted to piggyback, but we got a little bit.
We did go a little sidetracked. I've read so much fanfiction. You want to just talk about fanfictions? There's really good ones.
You can watch or watch along.
Yeah, no, but the timeline is my biggest issue with this movie specifically, because I think they do remove a lot of the like interpersonal drama, because like I said, the Harry and Ron are not speaking to Hermione for like half of this book because she turns in the firebolt.
The specifics of that are not there,
Yeah.
but I think the dynamic is, and it could be as simple as
They put it all on the Crookshanks and Scabbers thing, whereas like it's two separate fights.
But even just imagining this friend group, you know, two young men and a young woman, there would be divides in a friend group that way. And I think based on, you know, the plotting, the posturing, and the performances, we get that feeling without getting the specifics.
Yeah. Well, because I do
to a large extent.
I do also like that it is basically two movies in a row, but in this one, Harry isn't necessarily mad at Hermione for doing it. Like, Harry understands, but Ron is livid, and Harry has to choose a side, and he is sort of forced into choosing Ron's side. But in the fourth movie, when Ron is pissed that Harry is in the tournament, Hermione is the one that sticks up for him. So it's like he's paired off separate, like differently in both of them.
Because that's actually another thing for me is I was a medium, like I was a casual to big to normal fan of this. And so a lot of it sort of all exists at once to me in my mind. And I sort of...
Whereas I was like chomping at the bit for each of them as
these are chapters to you.
Yeah.
Where for me, like watching this, I was like, oh yeah, this happens in this one. This happens in this one. This happens in this one.
I solemnly swear that I am up to no good.
The Marauder's Map.
I had broad feelings of liking the third one, but it wasn't until sitting down this time where I was like, oh man, I can tell you exactly why I like it. And I really like Sirius Black. We get the introduction to Sirius Black.
We get Lupin as well.
I love it so. Alfonso Cuarón, is an auteur, and this movie has such a different vibe to it.
Yeah.
And it's a vibe that is much closer to my personal preference.
Sure.
And there's so many, we talked a lot in the watch long about how fatigued we are with modern blockbusters.
Yeah.
Modern big fantasy special effect extravaganzas. It was like slowly at first and then all at once. Like I truly did not realize how hideous so many movies had gotten until I was watching this movie that came out in 2004.
Yeah.
With
almost 20 years ago.
With just seamless CGI.
It's very good.
And there's just so many shots where I can feel, and we can debate whether or not it's accurate, but I can feel the scope and the scale of Hogwarts and the grounds and the way that we're like, there's not that weird, what is it called? The screen that Disney uses for Star Wars now?
I don't remember, but yeah.
Brilliant and can be used brilliantly and has its place.
Yeah, but
we've gotten a very, here are the two actors standing on a green screen, and then it's like the rear projection. Everything just feels weirdly rear projected.
We were watching Ahsoka, which is mediocre in my opinion, and Will was like, I wish that they were ever on a set he was like, I'm pissed. Like, he was mad about it.
Because that was my issue with Quantumania.
It's just the thing only, and then, like, tufts of grass and trees. And otherwise, they are just projected on that, and it's just annoying.
And there's so many places in this where they are in woods, in trees.
Well, not a lot, actually. Most of this is built in Leavesden Studio. Like, it's built stuff. Those are built sets. That's not real woods. But it doesn't, it
could have fooled me the right, like, I don't feel like I'm watching a Rob Marshall movie.
No, it feels like Sleepy Hollow, which was clearly also filmed on a soundstage.
Still alive?
Run, Katrina.
Yes, do run. And jump. And skip.
They're such deliberate, old, weird, magical looking woods that it's like, yes, obviously that's just pine straw on the ground.
But it feels real.
It's cohesive.
It feels real and not in a realism. Like, there was a lot of talk.
It feels tangible, not real.
Yeah, there was a lot of talk when Rob Marshall's Little Mermaid came out about the way it looked, and a lot of presumably younger fans were over-representing or misrepresenting, where they're like, yeah, of course it's going to look realistic, it's live action.
No.
And I'm like, realism is a style choice. This looks like a fantasy world, but it looks like a real fantasy world.
Correct.
It looks like I could actually go to these. Because
another instance of that, something that's also on a lot of sound stages, because nothing like that exists, is something that's even older, which is The Fifth Element.
Mm-hmm.
That shit's real. It looks real. It looks like a tangible, actual world, but it is a sci-fi fantasy world.
And I mean, there's entire sections where I'm sure it was Daniel on a green screen or a blue screen, because the entire hippogriff sequence. But it just, the way that the light looks and the way that the light is peering through the clouds, because I mean, the UK is a relatively gloomy place, and to be able to convey that, but also capture that, like, invigoration you get from rays of sunlight peering through dreary clouds. And just the way that, like, the lock sparkles in the light, where it's a handful of scenes where it looks, I'm sure there's a term for it, but it looks like a delta. Like, it just looks like, and
I mean, it's not the river flows into it.
And they utilize the ground so much in this movie. And I don't know if that's because the first two were...
They're more contained.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it is. It's like a more dynamic landscape, because it's like I said, they're basically shearing off a cliffside to get to Hagrid's hut. But I'll allow it. It looks amazing. It's very cool. I do prefer him being just kind of like across the yard, but it looks very cool.
It adds to the feeling. It adds to the adventure and the danger.
Yeah.
Because the amount of time where you're like, how are they going to get to their next class? And I'm like, but that's what I like about it, is how absurd and not practical it is.
You're telling me I have to scale this mountain to get back up there for potions? You're killing me.
And the teachers, not for nothing, but the teachers act that way, where they're like, better get a move on. Like,
the teachers are largely assholes, if I'm being honest.
But
this is also our first Emma Thompson.
As I recall, not much comes of her character in ways that I would.
Yeah, it does. She gives this prophecy in this one about Peter Pettigrew, and she's the one who gave the original prophecy about Harry, which we find out later. And then Umbridge tries to get her fired, and
I remember that part.
Dumbledore allows her to stay because he only ever gave her the divination position because she gave the prophecy about Harry, and he was like, I need to protect her. So he invited her to stay. Okay. She's very important.
What? That's not what I'm like, sure. Okay. If we're talking about the plot, she's important. I just meant that it feels like we plop Emma Thompson in two of these movies.
I mean, sure. She is technically in, I think, almost the rest of them.
Is she?
But she's very, she doesn't have lines. She's very in the back.
I guess that's sort of what I mean, where she doesn't get a grand, well, she does, but okay. Retracted. But I really like Lupin. I like David Thewlis.
Yeah.
I love his stuff with Harry.
Then I remembered that night on the train. And the Dementor.
Well, I'm very impressed. That suggests that what you fear the most is fear itself. This is very wise.
Yeah.
Because Harry so desperately needs an adult to give a single fuck about him.
Yes, and he gets 2 in this movie, and they're both violently ripped away from him. That's a big problem
She
I
likes
have,
to
too.
do that.
That kind of behavior just.
It's... and again, no offense to Stephen King, but it's very Stephen King of her.
You said that was one of your issues, is that there were too many characters in this that are what you referred to as Stephen King villains.
Yeah.
Which is they're villains for the sake of being villains.
Well, they're villains for the sake of being villains. They are too evil for, like, the genre they exist in. And yes, even I'm talking about horror. I don't want to hear it. And they also don't get punishment or a comeuppance until it's way too late to make an actual justice-style difference.
And self-righteousness is an ingredient that there's too much of. They're always so self-righteous. And so...
We're like, I guess Aunt Marge can't really... she is like an over-the-top, like, borderline comical villainy towards him.
I won't have this namby-pamby, wishy-washy nonsense about not beating people who deserve it. But you mustn't blame yourself about how this one turned out, Vernon. It's all to do with blood. Bad blood will out.
But she does get her comeuppance immediately. And, like, they have to, like, deflate her. Like, that's hilarious.
So I think for me that sort of stuff I took with a grain of salt because it just felt more like this style of fantasy children's writing that it just felt very it's why I never like very Lemony Snicket's, very sort of like
this is more nuanced than Lemony Snicket.
More nuanced, but I just sort of like that's what happens in these fantasy stories is adult villains are mean and evil and cruel, and that's just setting the stage. You know, I don't know if I fully made the point I was trying to make there, but I kind of watch it with like okay, when do we get to the actual story?
Sure.
Well, we get the Dementors in this. It's just like from the beginning, it's just so clear that we have moved up a rung.
Yeah.
Like we're just dealing with with real consequences and real things happening here.
Like people's souls are getting sucked out. That's intense. And it's supposedly a fate worse than death, according to the text.
Well, and I think even sort of like, for instance, focusing on the Buckbeak plot, because it's upsetting and, you know, violent and shocking and horrific, but it is tangible and it is sort of like, it's a way of focusing. It's a way of that energy is throughout this entire franchise and movie, but it's sort of distilled into that plot as a way to give us something to actually grip, like hold on to. And I like how much of the actual meat and potatoes of this movie and this story is dealing with that. The traveling through time, the Patronus that he thinks is his father, and then, because I said in our watch along, very Teen Wolf, be your own anchor.
Yeah.
You know, he keeps waiting for his father, to come save him. And just that realization in life that at a certain point, your dad is not going to save you. You have to become your dad, or you have to become that for yourself.
Yep.
I think it's captured and expressed really well here with these pieces. I like Sirius Black a lot. This is my Sirius Black one.
I like Sirius Black a lot.
I like Gary Oldman, Sirius Black a lot.
I like Gary Oldman a lot, too.
I understand some of your criticism, especially this watch.
Look, okay.
This viewing of it. He's overselling. So he's a scenery chewer.
He is, okay. Yes, but I understand he's fresh escaped from prison. He's been there for 13 years. I understand. I would be a little unhinged too, I'm sure. Except for we do find out he's been living as a dog most of the time, so the Dementors don't affect him as badly. He plays this as so completely unhinged, like as unhinged as Bellatrix, just in a different direction.
Enough talk, Remus. Come on, let's kill him. Wait. I did my waiting. 12 years of it in Azkaban.
I like movie 5 Sirius after he's sort of settled back into living in Grimmauld Place and he's like clean and he is not just like spouting off shit at every opportunity. There's just also plot wise, there's a lot of like really deliberate kind of like working so that they don't get the full story until it's too late.
Very well. Kill him. But wait 1 more minute. Harry has the right to know why.
I know why. You betrayed my parents. You're the reason they're dead.
No, Harry, it wasn't him. Somebody did betray your parents, but it was somebody who, until quite recently, I believed to be dead.
I get it. You like have to stall for so long for Snape to get there, and then you have to stall so long for this, and then you have to stall so long so that Peter can escape. But it's like, if only Remus and Sirius didn't just keep talking shit to each other that the kids don't understand. And you know what I mean? I'm just like, you're killing me.
But that's kind of my favorite part.
That's more of a...
Because I literally say in our watch along, I was like, but is it camp? And you were kind of like...
Well, the Peter part specifically, yes. But and that is, in my opinion, more of a failing. Not a failing, but it's more of like, I can see the seams of your plotting, which I don't like as much. Like,
I think it's especially bad coming off the heels of the other scene
in the Three Broomsticks,
which is your least favorite scene in a movie ever.
Well, not in a movie ever. It is my least favorite scene in all of Harry Potter.
I remember the specific moment. I was working on the fairy tale map in your old apartment, and we were watching it. And you were on the couch, and you almost had like a Leonardo DiCaprio Once Upon a Time in Hollywood reaction, where you were like, "This scene's terrible."
It was awful.
You were like, "What the hell is this scene?"
Yeah.
Now, tell me what this is all about.
Well, now years ago, when Harry Potter's parents realised they were marked for death, do you remember? They went into hiding. Few knew where they were. One who did was Sirius Black. And he told you know who.
I don't believe it.
No, that's not the worst of it.
No.
What could be worse?
Bess, Sirius Black was and remains to this day Harry Potter's godfather.
And it wasn't until you pointed it out that I realized that, and it's terrible. It's a group of people having a conversation that they all already know. Everyone in that room already knows what they're talking about.
Yeah.
And they're only having that conversation because Harry Potter is secretly hiding in that room and
like,
he needs to overhear the conversation.
It's like all of a sudden McGonagall and Fudge and Madame Rosmerta know what genre they're in, which is like so upsetting on multiple levels. And it was Flitwick is the other one that's in the book. I think it's the three of them, but I can never remember if Rosmerta's actually there. But it's definitely the two of them, and then Flitwick and Hagrid. And so they're all... But
I think your hatred for that scene, I think it bleeds into the Shrieking Shack scene.
I'm like, these are... Well, okay, but it is written... The Shrieking Shack scene is written like that in the book.
You know what it gives me?
So it bothers me less.
It gives me that John Mulaney performance where he's talking about that party, the something police party.
Yeah.
And he was like a room full of drunk children.
With the confidence of guys who have like already been to jail. You know, that like, I serve my nickel, you come and take me confidence. But white children.
And I don't remember what he says, something like, I serve my nickel, you come and take me. And it's like, it's that energy Gary Oldman is bringing to his...
Yeah.
But because I even said, I was like, because it's giving me spoken word lip sync for your life when they did
I'll give you that. I'm not arguing you that.
The designing women challenge that they did in All-Star 6 or 7. And the entire Shrieking Shack scene I want to see played out with Monet Exchange and Raja and like Jinx. And I want them all in like weird like drag version.
Wizard-ish.
But of the men.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And again, the kids, I do love the kids just sort of being like,
what is going going on?
And I don't know. I think all of it is so interesting and so exciting. Like, it's as thrilling to me now as it was the first time because there's so many things happening. And part of you, I'm a relatively astute storyteller. And so I remember even when I didn't fully know what was happening, I was like aware that there were machinations going on that I was not. I was like, clearly I don't have a piece of information.
Yeah.
And that was part of the excitement for me. And I think that still is very present in that scene. I love the depiction of Lupin as the werewolf. Werewolves, like mermaids, of course, I'm way more passionate about mermaids, but I love werewolves. And I love any time that you take a big swing with a mythical character. And that was always a big personal critique of mine of the Harry Potter franchise is it wasn't quite glamorous enough for me. You don't really get a lot of that. And nor do you get it here. That was a weird thing for me to bring up. The
werewolf's not glamorous, but it is a swing. It's like an interesting visual swing.
I remember when it happened, I was sort of like, wow, I've never seen a werewolf portrayed that way before. Yeah. And I even fell for it. Because like when he first transforms and he's a little bit like whimpery.
Wait. Professor?
I was sort of like,
yeah.
And then he.
Yeah.
But I really, I like how much of it. We're in a very tell, don't show place with storytelling in this day and age. And I like that this is a lot of showing. I mean, there's a lot of exposition and your criticism is the exposition.
Yeah, but it's like only...
But it's very clear that his werewolfism is eating away at him.
Darling, it is no joke. This is lycanthropy.
His lycanthropy.
Yeah. It's like there's like a cycle basically where he like always looks the healthiest on the new moon. It's like it is a cycle. He always gets more run down up until the moon, and then after the moon he always misses a few days of classes, and when he gets back he looks very ragged and like his eyes are more sunken.
But and we mentioned it's a pretty straightforward AIDS metaphor.
Which I mean lycanthropy always is that, yeah.
Or something, like that. And I think that that's all very evident without anyone saying that in the movie.
Course. Yeah. Well, but yeah.
I don't think that would happen again. I think an executive somewhere would be like, you need to make sure you put a button on that. I don't know. I truly...
Just imagine David Thewlis, classically trained. I've got wizard AIDS. Like, I just can't. So stupid.
When life hands you AIDS, make wizard AIDS.
Jesus Christ.
I don't know. This episode's never going to see the light of day. Do you understand how
pretty drunk on Fireball?
Do you understand how I feel though? I'm just sort of like, I want to talk about this stuff, but I also don't want to open myself up to criticism or feedback.
I think if you cannot stomach watching these movies or reading these books anymore, and you've gotten rid of your stuff and you've covered your tattoo, I think that's fine. I just also think that it's fine for people to still be able to enjoy something that at one point meant a lot to them.
I think it's big enough. I think it's full enough. I think it's comprehensive enough that it can exist on its own.
Yeah.
I don't think that it has to exist as a facet or an element of its creator. Like, I think it can take on its own life.
Yeah.
And
that being said, and let's mark the date. It's December 3rd, 2023. As of today, Suzanne Collins, who wrote The Hunger Games, has kept her mouth fucking shut and collected her paycheck and moved on.
There was a few more things. This is Michael Gambon's first portrayal. I really like Michael Gambon's portrayal of Dumbledore.
I like parts of it.
I certainly like parts of it.
Yeah.
I have come around, or I have come to understand your point.
So this movie, I largely have no problems. It starts in the fourth one with all the shouting that does not exist.
And I've seen that from other people now. I've seen that is a critique that is very much out there.
It was not fresh when I said it. I had seen it from many other people too.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh yeah, that's not, I was like, because also it's just like not, it's not in Dumbledore's character to basically like arm check Harry across the neck physically and shout in his face.
Harry, you put your name in the goblet of fire.
Like that's simply not in character for him.
Sure.
But I like his portrayal in this movie is great.
I like that he's a
it a lot.
bitch.
He's such a bitch.
And especially that, like, because you got to it before I could, but towards the end when Harry and Hermione are coming back from their time travel, and he's sort of...
Well?
He's free. We did it.
Did what? Good night.
And like walks
Good
down,
night.
yeah, bye. And just like saunters down while making hard eye contact with them on the way down the stairs.
And I was just sort of like, especially, you know, given what we come to find out about Dumbledore.
Hi.
I'm like, there he is.
Yep.
That's him. And that's sort of what I said, where I was like, I feel like Michael Gambon's Dumbledore fucks.
Yeah.
And you were like, well, Richard Harris is ancient.
Of course. I mean, of course. The thing for me is like, which I mentioned, is it's like once you find out about the like larger betrayal that Dumbledore is perpetrating all of these years, I think the softness and like delicacy and like real Santa Claus friendliness that Richard Harris portrays it as would have been a bigger twist. But like with this performance from Michael Gambon, I'm like, that bitch knows stuff. And he is keeping it from me deliberately. Like, so that's where I just, and like, then obviously I just do have like some issues, but like, I think that his Dumbledore gets too outwardly angry in a way that, again, he did. There's so many moments in the books where it's talking about like, he had a little twinkle in his eye. And it's like the twinkle does change depending on his attitude, but he's always like smiling, and he's always like presenting a friendly, you know, outward appearance. It's like when he's meeting with Fudge and the Executioner for Buckbeak, and he's just like, oh, look at the strawberry patch. And you know, that's Dumbledore. This movie, he's great in this movie. I didn't start having problems with him till later.
Okay. I'm trying to think if there's any of the other buzzy... Oh, budget, $130 million.
So manageable.
I'm just going to weep. Ugh. I can't stress enough. Like, we were watching it on Max, but it rivals any movie that came out. Like, it looked better than Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania.
Yeah.
Like,
that movie was CGI soup. It was nothing. That movie was nothing.
And I just don't understand where that money's going. Like, where? Like, do you remember when movies cost $100 million and that was a lot of money? Yep. And now it's like, we haven't seen a major movie that did not cost a minimum of $250 million.
Well, that was like we were talking about the other day where, I mean, rip Sebastian Stan. He's about to play Donald Trump in some movie, young Donald Trump in some movie. And I was like, I am begging someone to put him in a $60 million rom-com. Like, begging. I anything.
What was the part of me
besides playing Donald Trump? I'm fucking sick. It's horrible.
Like, just openly weeping.
Because I am though. Then
I can't.
Because I am just Laurie from Little Women. I'm just Timothy Chalamet in Little Women going, and I'll watch because I love Sebastian Stan, but like, at what cost? I probably won't actually watch it, but it is that kind of thing where it's like, are you serious?
It's the kind of thing where it was like everyone was trying to copy Marvel's MCU extended universe, and meanwhile I was like, oh well, the logical conclusion, because you can't. When Hollywood tries to copy this stuff, they try to photocopy it, and I'm like, you gotta slide some pieces around. And so I was like, make a Netflix rom-com extended universe.
Sure.
Yeah.
Because that's the other thing is like, no, it's not trying to copy it. What you're trying to do is like, I have photocopied, or like, I have written this beautiful manuscript, and instead of photocopying it and like doing a control, like replace, like a find and replace to change the names, you just stuck your hand halfway through Act 3 and ripped out a bunch of pages and was like, I got it. That's it. You didn't do any groundwork. You didn't do any starting groundwork.
Well, what I meant though is that they are trying to do the same thing. Like the MCU's extended or cinematic universe worked.
Yeah.
So then we tried to copy it with DC.
Yeah.
That's the same thing.
Well, okay.
So then we tried to copy it with Universal Studios monster movies. I mean,
it's slightly different, but it's
the same thing.
Yeah.
And so I'm like, you got to do it different. We did get the Marauders map. A lot of fun, realized beautifully.
I do love the way it is designed.
We got Peter Pettigrew, Timothy Spall.
Expelliarmus!
Acting.
Yeah.
Acting the house down boots. It's so
slay.
I just know, and that's another thing for me with wanting to still cover this. And because that's sort of my angle is I'm sort of like, oh, that's a beautiful, Harry Potter franchise you got there.
Shame something happened to
someone took it and made it gay. And that's sort of because there was that.
I've got this website. It's called Archive of Our Own, and everyone is so gay.
It's so queer coded, though.
So queer coded,
and that's just where I'm at. And I think the South Park did that stupid Panderverse special that it was actually very funny as far as I'm concerned. And there were so many things about it that in true South Park fashion, the wrong people took it and ran with it thinking it was for them when in fact it was about them.
Yeah.
And one of the catchphrases is because Cartman is Kathleen Kennedy and he just keeps barging into boardrooms going,
Put a chick in it, make her gay!
Hey! And I'm like,
put a chick in it.
Make her gay. And that's just sort of where I'm at. Where that's now just become my motto.
Yeah.
And again, that scene. I mean, watching those three men acting talent in front of those three kids, and the first place that my brain went was, this is like drag.
Sure. Well, it's also like, and then if you also think about it, and this is what I do like about like fandom and fan fiction so much, is it's like you can extrapolate a whole relationship onto the three of them, where it's like they've known each other for 20 plus years. They have, especially
if they're Ben Barnes and Dane DeHaan and Aaron Taylor Johnson
and Andrew Garfield. So it's like I definitely agree, where it's like that is such a rich history, where I also saw this thing that was attributed more to a Stranger Things place, but it was like, there's nothing like the toxic relationship between you and the dude who you gave each other your first hand jobs. And it was Steve and Tommy from Stranger Things, and I was like, you're not lying though.
I mean, I still haven't recovered.
So it's like, if you're imagining, especially this Sirius and Remus thing, which is like the main one that people like to do, that's like, Remus was very betrayed that like Sirius would have done that to them and their friend group, and like then also killed their fourth friend. And so he's been alone for his whole adult life. No, 100%, because you can look at it on the other end too.
I'm so sorry.
You can look at it from the Sirius side too and be like, you immediately believed that I had done this thing and let me go to prison without a fight. Like, you didn't even try. And so it's like, from both, if you're looking at them as like doomed ex-lovers, it suddenly is there's another thing happening, and you're like, what the fuck?
I have no idea. This episode was never on the rails.
Let's wrap up. It's 8:05. I need to go to bed.
It's very at 8:05 of Thanksgiving dinner, your mom blurts out, "In my womb, I carried my Avenger energy."
Or Rex likes to cry after he ejaculates.
Is there anything else that really needs to be?
Not a lot. It is good. I'm not arguing that it's. I don't think it's a bad movie.
I don't think
it's a good adaptation.
One thing I want to say for it in its credit, I think it does a very good job ushering between.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like sort of being like, shit's about to get real.
Yeah.
And here's your like appetizer of that.
Yeah.
And sort of each movie after kind of gets realer and darker and more serious. And that's one of the things that I think the movies captured brilliantly, because I now do understand what you mean with your criticisms of the adaptations. But that aside, I think from the perspective of solely watching the movies, they build very nicely upon.
I agree with that for sure.
So that was a conversation about Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban.
You saw it. You can't unsee it.
So I would say that I successfully conveyed about 35 to 40% of what I wanted to accomplish with this, and that's better than I thought I would.
That's fine. That's enough.
Big Mean Girls, I just have a lot of feelings.
Yeah.
So anyways, hopefully you enjoyed that. And if not, I don't know if we care. Probably not.
Not really.
You can head on over to the Patreon and do the watch along and check out the other stuff. We're trying to do more on the Patreon, and we're actually having a lot of success with it.
Yeah. We're doing Desperate Housewives. We're putting up some Dawson's Creek live watches.
And some of our movies are making their way over there.
Yeah.
In a perfect world, I would be able to condense and edit down and release more reactions because people love reactions. That's not in the cards for us at the moment. But you know what? If more of you join the Patreon consistently and we get enough money, we might be able to hire an editor.
Or if any of you want to do any editing for free, freelance editing for free,
you can edit our reactions.
Once we start making more money, you might get a cut.
So we got big plans for the coming year.
Yeah.
So watch this space, and hopefully you had a good holiday, because this is probably going to be released around holiday time. And so
bye.
Bye.
Oh, you're still here, are you?
Yes.
Goodbye.